In 1940, the storm broke over Europe. The British Empire stood alone, a bastion against a continent overrun. The skies were the new front line. The era of the biplane was over, but just barely.
At the end of a decade, and with the upsurge of the Nazi war machine in Germany under its Führer Adolf Hitler, are we getting closer to war?
The German Luftwaffe, led by Hermann Göring, boasts a significantly larger force compared to our Royal Air Force, with up to 4,500 aircraft at its disposal. The Luftwaffe pilots are battle-hardened due to Germany's involvement in the Spanish Civil War and Hitler's aggressive advances through Czechoslovakia. In contrast, the Royal Air Force has around 135 squadrons, just over half the size of the Luftwaffe's force, prepared for any potential conflict. Middle East Command has only 20 squadrons, mostly equipped with obsolete aircraft such as the Vickers-Wellesley, one of the few monoplane bombers. The most modern aircraft in service is the Wellington bomber, while at home, light bombers include the Fairey Battle. Medium monoplane bombers include the Armstrong Whitworth Whitley, which first flew in 1936, and the new Bristol Blenheim, which can carry a relatively modest bomb load and has a limited range. The next bombers set for production are the Short Stirling and the Handley Page Halifax heavy bombers. Although Britain leads on the seas, it has yet to achieve dominance in the air. The RAF's fighter lineup includes the Gloucester Gladiator and the Bolton Paul Defiant, noted for its distinctive rear gun turret. The latest fighter to enter squadron service is the Supermarine Spitfire, complementing the Hawker Hurricane, with each aircraft armed with 8 machine guns. As Adolf Hitler prepares his invasion of Poland, speculation is rampant that any future war with Great Britain will involve mass attacks from the air. With this in mind, London and all other major cities are preparing for any potential aerial onslaught. As our citizens are forced to evacuate, the question remains, how prepared are we? On September 1, 1939, Germany attacks Poland, igniting a blaze across Europe.
And that consequently, this country is at war with Germany.
At the outbreak of war on September 3, 1939, 6 Wellington squadrons are available for immediate action, alongside the only other 2 heavy bomber types, Hampdens and Whitleys. On the first day, 9 loaded Wellingtons and 18 Hampdens are dispatched to locate the German Navy. At this time, all bombers are restricted in their capabilities. They're forbidden to bomb anything on German soil, except for dropping propaganda leaflets codenamed Nichols. Enemy ships are legitimate targets only if they're anchored in open harbour waters or at sea. The bombers return safely but empty-handed, with most crews jettisoning their bombs rather than risk landing with a full load of live explosives, something they've rarely practiced. Later that evening, 10 Whitleys are dispatched to Hamburg, Bremen and the Ruhr area to drop 6 million leaflets. The Whitleys are the only heavy bombers allowed to operate at night. All other bombers are required to operate in daylight without any fighter escort, based on the theory that tight formations will allow them to protect each other. 2 Whitleys are forced to land in France, with a third crashing at its base. The first test for the RAF came at 11:15 a.m. on the first day, when an unidentified aircraft was detected heading for London from the continent. Air raid sirens wailed for the first time. On September the 6th, a searchlight crew reported German aircraft approaching the Thames estuary. This quickly escalated as anti-aircraft guns at Chatham began firing blindly into the air. Controllers from 11 Group ordered fighters from Hornchurch and North Weald to take off and intercept. The arrival of these squadrons over Southend added to the confusion on the RDF screens, resulting in even more fighters being scrambled. Within an hour, all aircraft were ordered back to their bases, having seen nothing of the reported enemy. This fiasco became known as the Battle of Barking Creek. By the outbreak of war, the training period for pilots had been drastically reduced. It will be mid-1940 before a significant number of new pilots are ready to replace the regulars. RAF depots and reporting points are being opened to receive as many new recruits as possible. Call-up papers are shown to RAF personnel, who then direct the new recruits to the next stage of their initiation into the Air Force. The RAF doesn't just need pilots, it also requires mechanics, navigators, wireless operators, and a host of men and women to keep the aircraft operational. Form filling and aptitude tests are the order of the day. Questions like, which school did you attend? And what qualifications do you have are common. This process is generally followed by an assessment conducted by fairly high-ranking officers. Meanwhile, fighter command is being depleted. At least 4 squadrons have been sent to France to support the Army's British Expeditionary Force, and an additional 6 squadrons have been placed on a mobile state in case they're needed in France. Some argue that the aerial defence of the UK is now woefully inadequate. The medical condition of our recruits is fundamental, as they will serve as the eyes and ears of the RAF. Aspiring pilots must have superb eyesight for obvious reasons. New pilots will be sent to training units to learn the basics of flying, typically in the de Havilland Tiger Moth. From eyesight to balance and orientation, recruits undergo a spinning test to assess their reaction to being hurled around at speed. This test isn't as amusing as it looks, as in a real aircraft one may well find oneself spinning towards the earth below. Steady on there. Breathing is also important, as most aircrew will have to fly at high altitudes, often requiring the use of oxygen. A good pair of lungs is essential. After passing your medical, the next step is to get kitted out with your uniform and other essential clothing needed for your time in the RAF. You'll receive a knife, fork, and mug. Additionally, you'll be required to take the oath of allegiance to king and country. All aircrew members are issued with white silk gloves, woolen gloves, leather gauntlets, knee-length flying boots, and Irvine flying jackets, which can be used in various combinations depending on the weather. Generally, you'll be issued with 2 tunics, 2 pairs of trousers, a pullover, 2 shirts with separate collars, 2 vests and underclothes, webbing belts, haversacks, and a water bottle. With kit bags on their shoulders, the new recruits can only watch in wonder at the precision of the seasoned members ahead. Depots have been set up in many locations across the country, but the system is the same wherever you report. For aircrew, the Sidcot suit is essential, featuring a warm inner lining, a waterproof outer layer, and a fur collar. Once enlisted, you'll become part of a disciplined team capable of marching, living, and fighting together. At training camp, you'll be supervised every minute of your new life. The initial drill forms the foundation of your efficiency. Regardless of your ultimate rank or duty in the RAF, it's imperative to react immediately to instructions, both mentally and physically. Physical fitness will be a priority, and drill and physical training will instill the efficiency and keenness required for all your tasks. A fit force is an efficient force. You'll need to learn how to recognize aircraft in the air, distinguishing between friendly and enemy aircraft. It's crucial to avoid mistakenly shooting down one of your own because you fail to identify whether they were friend or foe. If you're aircrew, knowing how to use your lifeline, your parachute, is essential. Understanding how to correctly fit your complicated harness is vital. As a pilot, you'll eventually fly in this machine, so familiarizing yourself with it is important. The link trainer a widely used device for ground instruction in instrument flying, resembles a small aircraft built around an exact replica of an airplane's cockpit. The cockpit of the Link trainer is equipped with a hood to simulate blind flying conditions, and is fully outfitted with all the standard controls and instruments of an airplane. These are ingeniously connected, so that the actual flying experience is replicated when the trainee sits inside and operates the trainer under the hood. Flight simulation has become an accepted and valuable tool for initial pilot training. Developed in the late 1920s by Edwin Link, the Link trainer used technology and components from player pianos to create its flight simulation capabilities. While the Link trainer effectively simulates the experience of flying, it doesn't replicate the flight characteristics of any specific aircraft. This isn't an issue when training students on basic training aircraft like the Tiger Moth. On this particular aircraft, you can clearly see the hood positioned behind the pilot. This hood can be closed to conduct blind flying exercises, requiring the trainee to rely solely on instruments, as visibility outside the cockpit is obstructed once in the air. After learning to fly as aircrew, you'll advance to mastering more complex aircraft at Operational Conversion Units, OCUs. Mistakes in aircraft handling and operation at this stage have previously led to damage and loss of valuable frontline aircraft. This is where you'll refine your skills. The Airspeed Oxford, commonly known as the Oxbox, is the aircraft you're most likely to train on. It's the RAF's first twin-engine, low-wing monoplane trainer, and entered service with the Central Flying School in 1937. The Mark II Oxford is used to train pilots, radio operators, and navigators. If you're destined to fly bombers or large transport aircraft, you'll certainly train in the Oxbox. The Mark I version of the aircraft is a weapons trainer, typically fitted with a dorsal gun turret for practicing machine gun fire in the air. You'll be required to fly numerous sorties. By February 1940, the German Luftwaffe doesn't have air bases on the continent within reasonable range of Britain. Although the RAF has managed to shoot down a small number of German bombers on isolated sorties, this period is known as the Phony War. As part of your training, you'll learn to fly in formation under all weather conditions. After each sortie, you'll need to assess and review everything you've learned during your mission. Despite a slow start, aircraft production is now reliably reported to be exceeding 300 aircraft per month. This achievement is due to the unwavering dedication of Britain's men and women working in aircraft factories spread across the country and the Commonwealth. Factories are now working 24 hours a day in shifts to keep the aircraft coming. We're also informed that bomber daylight operations are to continue into mid-1940, in spite of appalling casualty rates, especially for the Blenheim squadrons. Night raids have increased during the winter of 1939 to 1940, but due to inadequate navigation aids, heavy bombers are struggling to locate and accurately bomb their targets. Particularly concerning is the absence of long-range fighters capable of escorting our bombers all the way to Germany. Production of the Wellington bomber has surpassed expectations. While we are still losing too many aircraft, the contributions from our factories and the dedicated efforts of our workers, including many women, are helping to mitigate the losses. On a positive note, the new short Stirling heavy bomber is now coming off the production lines. Britain's first truly heavy bomber made its maiden flight on May 14, 1939, powered by 4 Bristol Hercules engines. The initial prototype crashed on landing, but the second prototype was completed and flying by autumn 1940. The first production aircraft, designated Stirling 1, is being assembled in 20 different factories. It features the more powerful Hercules 2 engines and lacks the dorsal turret. Germany, here we come. With most of our men called up, it's now up to the women to learn new trades under the watchful guidance of experienced personnel, as shown in our pictures. Women are taking on a range of roles, from operating lathes and constructing enormous wings, to painting, spraying and welding. Nothing is too much for our dedicated and hard-working women.
For centuries, Great Britain has been a land of merchants and tradesmen, a nation of shopkeepers and commission men, whose existence and worldwide power were wholly dependent upon their merchant fleets. Cargo ships to bring them their food, and the raw materials for their commerce and industry, and in turn, to carry away to the markets of the world the products of Britain's countless mills and shops and factories.
The seas around our island must be defended, a task handled by Coastal Command, with its large, short Sunderland flying boats. At headquarters scattered along our coasts, the daily vigilance continues. Intelligence is gathered and analysed, messages are passed down the chain of command, and crucial decisions are made regarding which crews are assigned to specific patrols. The pilots and their crews ready themselves for any task ahead. Their primary mission is to protect our crucial merchant fleets, which are essential for delivering much-needed food and munitions. Without this protection, Britain would face starvation. The Backroom Boys, or IRCs as they're known within the RAF, each have their important roles. From armourers to mechanics, this vast pool of skill ensures that these mighty aircraft are always prepared to patrol our oceans and seas around the clock. Minute by minute, new information arrives, ready to be acted upon. The powerful Pegasus engines roar to life, and the Sunderland gets set for takeoff. This is a mission to Norway, as there's been talk of German warships entering Frontime Field. If this information is true, could this be the prelude to an invasion by the Axis powers? The short Sunderland is a military adaptation of the commercial Empire-class flying boat. It can stay airborne for up to 20 hours, but its 250-pound bombs are relatively small and can only cause significant damage if they detonate within 6 feet of a submarine's hull. As the hours pass and our aircraft approaches the target, our worst fears are confirmed and messages are relayed back to headquarters. It's verified that German forces are in the fields. The Sunderland's gunners remain vigilant for enemy threats before returning to base at Plymouth. On April 9, 1940, Germany launches its invasion of Norway, having already occupied neutral Denmark, which provides the Luftwaffe with closer air bases for attacking Norway. With only a token force of RAF Hurricanes and Gladiators, the devastation of Norway seems inevitable. Meanwhile, over 3,000 miles away in Canada, a major air training program for the British Commonwealth is underway. A number of new training schools are producing pilots at a rate of 15,000 per year. The training program in Canada also prepares thousands of aircraftmen, gunners, mechanics, and technicians. Modern air warfare demands specialized knowledge in many fields, including aerial navigation, communications, strategy, and tactics, and mastering these skills takes about 10 months. To ensure that aircraft remain in optimal condition, pilots must accumulate 150 hours of flying time. As the air training scheme progresses, there's troubling news for the young men of the Royal Air Force. Even while the Norwegian fiasco is underway, German forces start their blitzkrieg against the Low Countries and work their way westward through France. The Luftwaffe continues its blitzkrieg assault on Paris and relentlessly pushes the British Expeditionary Force, BEF, closer to the Channel coastline. On the evening of May the 10th, Winston Churchill assumes the role of British Prime Minister, while the German blitzkrieg presses on. In France, several Hurricane squadrons are plagued by gun stoppages, due to being issued with 30-year-old ammunition from the armourers. Additionally, many of these aircraft are still equipped with two-bladed fixed-pitch propellers, which significantly hampers their performance. The Fairy Battle, often referred to as the Flying Coffin, was designed as a light bomber. With a top speed of just 241 miles per hour, it's slow, lacks self-sealing fuel tanks, and is poorly armed, making it highly vulnerable. During the French campaign, the Fairy Battles suffer catastrophic losses, with 60% of the aircraft being destroyed on each mission, representing an appalling waste of valuable aircrews. Just 5 days later, the French Premier concedes that France has been defeated. Dowding demonstrated to Churchill that sending additional fighters to France would be futile, as within 2 weeks, losses will be so severe that the RAF will be left with no Hurricanes at all. Before France's final collapse, Fighter Command has lost a total of 477 fighters. More critically, the loss of frontline pilots is a severe blow. While aircraft can be replaced, trained pilots are far more difficult to come by. The BEF, a crucial component of the British military effort, faces imminent threat. Consequently, London has issued orders to initiate Operation Dynamo, the evacuation from Dunkirk on the northern French coast starting on May the 26th. RAF Fighter Command deploys squadrons from the south of England to provide air cover for the retreat. By June the 18th, the last remnants of the BEF returned to England, having suffered the loss of 432 Hurricanes, Spitfires and Battles, equivalent to approximately 20 squadrons. Britain is now isolated and all alone. Across the Channel, the Luftwaffe settles into its new captured bases and airfields. The recent campaigns have cost the Luftwaffe approximately 1,284 aircraft, mostly to the RAF. As a result, significant time is spent on regrouping. On June the 18th, Prime Minister Winston Churchill addresses the world.
What General Weygand has called the Battle of France is over. The Battle of Britain is about to begin.
And as with fierce air attacks, Germany launched the prelude to the Battle of Britain, world attention was focused upon an ancient office building in London's Whitehall, the Air Ministry, General Headquarters of the RAF. Here, working every hour of every day, is the Air Council, the Air Minister, the Under Secretary of State for Air, the Chief of the Air Staff, Sir Charles Portal.
The Ministry is under constant guard, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, protected by members of the RAF Regiment, who are doing an excellent job safeguarding the individuals responsible for our national destiny. Security is of utmost importance. While the guards are rotated above, the air staff are focused on planning for any potential attacks from Germany's formidable Luftwaffe. Newell meets with Portal and Air Chief Marshals Sir Frederick Bohill, Sir Richard Pearce and Sir Hugh Dowding, the Commanders-in-Chief of Coastal, Bomber and Fighter Commands respectively. On RAF airfields across the country, fighters are made ready for immediate deployment. In this instance, the Hawker Hurricane has its 8 machine guns calibrated to deliver a precise and deadly blow to the enemy. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, raw .303 bullets are sorted and loaded into organised gun belts. These belts are then carefully packed into ammunition boxes before being supplied to the aircraft. This process is repeated hundreds of times daily as pilots are scrambled to defend our island. Hitler, believing that Britain would seek peace following the French defeat, was mistaken. On July 2nd, the German High Command approves a directive for a potential landing operation against England. Meanwhile, the Luftwaffe continues to target vital shipping in the Channel. In July 1940, the Luftwaffe's strength includes 944 bombers and 824 fighters, while the RAF can deploy 600 serviceable fighters, including some outdated Defiance and converted Blenheim 1 fighters. Britain does have a crucial advantage, RDF or radar. Hugh Dowding, now heading Fighter Command, recognised the potential of RDF and strategically positioned radar stations around the critical approaches to London several years ago. The radar system has an immediate backup with the Royal Observer Corps, who physically help to plot the direction, probable height, speed and strength of any enemy formation. Details are relayed to Fighter Command, where the information is plotted onto a tabletop map of the UK. This allows the group commander to dispatch the appropriate fighter squadrons to intercept enemy formations efficiently, avoiding unnecessary time and fuel spent on long, exhausting patrols. With adequate time to get our fighters airborne and leveraging the height advantage, the squadrons are directed towards the enemy formations, which have been tasked with attacking our airfields. The RAF benefits from fighting over its own territory, and the radar system, including Chain Home Low, provides early detection of low-flying aircraft. This gives British fighter squadrons advance warning of raids, allowing them to scramble in time to gain a height advantage and estimate the size of the opposition. Day after day, Luftwaffe crews are surprised by the resistance from the RAF, despite being briefed that Fighter Command is on the verge of defeat. Indeed, British factories and civilian repair centres are working around the clock, producing and repairing aircraft in a steady and crucial stream during this critical battle. As the Battle of Britain progresses, it becomes clear that the German bombers are slow, poorly armed and unwieldy. The Stuka dive bombers, which had achieved success in Spain, Norway and France, are being shot down in large numbers by the faster Hurricanes and Spitfires of the RAF. Even the much-praised Bf-110, intended as a destroyer fighter, proves too cumbersome for effective use as a bomber escort. The Me-109, although a formidable opponent for the Hurricanes and somewhat less effective against the Spitfire, has been tasked with maintaining tight formation with the bombers to offer protection. At the squadron level, RAF maintenance crews, often referred to as the unsung heroes, are performing crucial elementary repairs. Their tireless work is essential in keeping the aircraft airworthy and ready for their grateful pilots. The Battle of Britain has progressed through distinct phases. The first phase involves German attacks on Allied shipping, which ended on July 24, 1940. The second phase, from July 24th to August 7th, saw intense fighter engagements, as the Luftwaffe aimed to destroy the RAF in the air. The third phase began on August 8th, with the focus shifting to attacks on RAF bases. Then, on September 7th, the Luftwaffe campaign switches again, this time to daylight bombing of London, Britain's capital city. As if Fighter Command hadn't enough to worry about with the battle for our survival raging, it's also responsible for Balloon Command. At secret locations, a large workforce, predominantly composed of diligent women from the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, assembles the balloons. Recently, the Duchess of Gloucester visited one of these units to boost the squadron's morale and observe the operations firsthand. She toured the expansive hangars and saw the women being trained in the construction and maintenance of these massive balloons. In November 1938, Fighter Command Chief Hugh Dowding was given overall responsibility for RAF Balloon Command. The prevailing belief at the time was that the bomber will always get through, prompting the revival of the barrage balloon concept, which evolved from the kite observation balloons used in World War I. Once assembled, each balloon is inflated. The tethering cables are carefully inspected and attached, and any leaks in the barrage balloon are sealed. Once prepared, the balloons are moored together to create an aerial barrage around and in front of crucial targets, including towns and cities. The purpose of this setup is to present such a significant hazard to low-flying aircraft that they're compelled to fly at higher altitudes. This reduces their bombing accuracy and theoretically makes them easier targets for anti-aircraft gunners and defending fighters. Finally, the balloon is fully inflated with air, allowing the technicians to climb inside to adjust the valves and address any final sealing issues. Initially formed under the Auxiliary Air Force, the balloon squadrons were later expanded into a separate Balloon Command to establish barrages around major British towns, cities and high-priority targets. Dover is one of the towns surrounded by this defensive balloon barrage. Even in the early days of the Second World War, German fighters proved capable of swiftly neutralizing the hydrogen-filled balloons. A few well-aimed bursts of gunfire would cause the balloons to burst into flames and plummet rapidly to the ground. Despite these losses, the balloons still managed to down unsuspecting low-flying enemy aircraft attempting to evade our radar coverage. On September the 17th, it was reported that Hitler had personally ordered the indefinite postponement of Operation Sea Lion, the planned invasion of Britain. Goering's original claim that the Luftwaffe could dismantle Fighter Command in 4 to 5 days had proven to be a hollow promise. Following October the 20th, the Luftwaffe shifted tactics, focusing on nighttime attacks on British cities, a campaign known as the Blitz. These assaults were set to continue through to the following spring. Initially, London is the primary target. Night after night, massive Luftwaffe air armadas head towards the capital, aiming to destroy both the city and the morale of the British people. The first significant RAF bombing raid on Berlin took place on the night of August 25th and 26th, 1940, as a reprisal for the Luftwaffe's attack on London the previous night. It later emerged that the bombing of London was also in retaliation for recent night raids by Bomber Command on Berlin. Much of the bombing in London focused on the port, causing significant damage to shipping and resulting in numerous civilian casualties. During September and October alone, 13,000 people were killed and around 20,000 were injured. Despite the Blitz's intent to undermine Londoners' morale, the bombing often had the opposite effect, with the city's residents becoming even more resolute in their determination to keep the city functioning. For the RAF's night fighting crews, the air war has been long and frustrating, with little to show for their labours. Radar technology was still in its early stages and proved inadequate for Hurricane pilots who'd previously excelled in daylight combat. The same difficulties applied to the new Spitfires, which had to navigate the dark with minimal guidance to locate enemy bombers. Eventually, success was achieved through the development and deployment of airborne radar. The slow-moving Defiant was adapted into a reasonably effective night fighter, though operating the new technology was challenging. Ground-based listening stations continued to play a crucial role. The Blitz on London would last 56 days, but the Luftwaffe's targets extended beyond the capital.
This is more like it. Here they come. On sound. On sound. Hostile aircraft coming in northeast.
Industrial cities such as Coventry, Birmingham, Manchester, Sheffield and Glasgow, as well as Britain's ports and dockyards, were also subjected to attacks. Despite the devastation, the National Fire Service worked tirelessly to control fires and prevent them from spreading through civilian areas. Lord Halifax, the Foreign Secretary, made efforts to lift the spirits of Londoners by touring the ravaged city, which against all the odds continued to function. The relentless routine of life in London during the Blitz is marked by a cycle of destruction and resilience. As night falls, residents head to air raid shelters, seeking safety from the constant barrage of German bombs. Each morning, they emerge to survey the damage, only to return to the shelters as dusk approaches. The destruction leaves many homeless, and the scale of the damage can be overwhelming. The wounded are cared for by medical teams, while the police work diligently to prevent looting and maintain order amid the chaos. Despite the grim circumstances, Londoners display remarkable fortitude. They come together to clear debris, rebuild, and support one another. The spirit of resilience and community is a testament to their determination to persevere through the darkest days of the Blitz. The Bristol Beaufighter, an adaptation of the Bristol Beaufort torpedo bomber, became one of Britain's key assets in the night fighting role during the Blitz. Despite initial concerns about its manoeuvrability due to its large size, the Beaufighter quickly proved its worth. The first prototype made its maiden flight in July 1939, and the aircraft began to enter service in late 1940. Its powerful armament, which included 4 20mm cannons and up to 6 .303 machine guns, made it a formidable opponent against German bombers. The Beaufighter's development was a direct response to the need for effective night fighters, especially as the Luftwaffe's night bombing campaigns intensified. The first successful night interception by the Beaufighter is on the night of November 19, 1940. When equipped with a bulky AI air interception radar, it downs a Ju-88 to an engine-fast bomber. The Beaufighter becomes the most successful night fighter of the period, with the latest airborne radar and 4 hard-punching cannon which rip into the underside of the radar, sending him into oblivion. On May 10, 1941, London experienced its final large-scale bombing raid of the Winter Blitz. That night, 541 German aircraft carried out a devastating assault, resulting in 1,436 people killed and around 1,800 injured. The bombing destroyed approximately 5,000 homes and ravaged 700 acres of the city with incendiaries and high explosives. Despite the severity of the attack, London's defences managed to shoot down at least 14 of the attacking German aircraft. At dawn on June 22, 1941, Hitler's generals initiated Operation Barbarossa, the massive offensive against Russia, deploying approximately 60% of the Luftwaffe. This strategic shift provided a significant reduction in pressure on fighter command, enabling the RAF to focus on a more limited offensive strategy, with fighter command operating by day and bomber command by night. Amid these developments, training for air crews remains a top priority, particularly for bomber crews. At St. Eville, 217 Squadron is stationed with their Avro Ansons, named in honour of the 18th century Royal Navy Admiral George Anson. St. Eville is a bustling airfield where Hurricanes and Blenheims operate side by side, sharing the facilities. The Anson Mark I, which entered service in February 1936, was originally designed as a coastal patrol reconnaissance aircraft. It features a manually operated enclosed gun turret with a single .303 machine gun and is powered by two Armstrong Siddeley Cheetah engines. Primarily used for light transport and training, the Anson has become a key asset in the RAF and Commonwealth for training navigators, wireless operators and air gunners. Notably, it was the RAF's first monoplane and the first aircraft in service with retractable hand-cranked landing gear. On the 5th of September 1939, an Anson of No. 500 Squadron made the first RAF attack of the war on a German submarine. Following our close victory after the Battle of Britain, junkyards with a difference have sprung up across the country. The remnants of the German fighters and bombers that once attacked our shores now stand as stark reminders of the enemy's failures. One such example is a German Me-109 fighter, which is prominently displayed at Crown Hill as a testament to what we've overcome. This aircraft, showcased as a monument to Hitler's miscalculations, draws visitors from across the country. People are rallying to support the war effort in many ways. Contributions, even as small as a farthing, are being poured into the Spitfire Fund, dedicated to increasing the production of these crucial fighters. Local Spitfire funds have been established in cities and towns nationwide, with donations flowing in steadily. For the general public, the opportunity to view the sophisticated Bf-109 up close provides a tangible connection to the ongoing struggle and serves as a source of inspiration and determination. In the national scrapyards, nothing is wasted. The remains of downed German aircraft are meticulously collected, melted down and repurposed to construct new British fighters and bombers. Every piece of metal is reclaimed to bolster the RAF's capabilities, ensuring that every scrap contributes to our ongoing fight. Meanwhile, British bomber squadrons maintain a fond regard for the Bristol Blenheim. Since its first flight in April 1935, the Blenheim has proven to be a versatile asset, serving both as a bomber and a fighter. At its introduction, it was faster than the RAF's existing fighters. A typical day on a Blenheim squadron begins with a briefing for the day's bombing sortie. The pilots and observers gather to receive and review all necessary information for the raid. Meanwhile, outside, the ground crews are busy preparing the aircraft. They remove the protective tarpaulins from the glass panels and ensure the .303 machine guns are in place and ready for action. The Blenheim Mark IV is manned by a crew of 3: the pilot, an observer who handles navigation and bomb dropping, and a gunner who also serves as the wireless operator. Equally crucial to the operation are the armourers who prepare the bombs for the mission.
Pistols and test them. Most of the testing of components has been done by the second party, whilst the first party was loading the bombs up in the bomb store. The actual fusing, therefore, starts immediately on the arrival of the bombs at the fusing point. Before the detonators are inserted into the detonator cavity or exploder, this cavity is gauged. The detonator is then inserted into the bomb. First the transit plug is removed, then the gauge is inserted in the detonator cavity, and then the detonator. The detonator, and finally the pistol.
Back in the crew room, the navigators spread their maps onto a large table, approximately 20 feet long by 7 feet wide, typically covered with a smooth green top. Here, they use their open maps and charts to work out flight bearings and details, referencing a large map on the wall. Meanwhile, the armourers continue their work, preparing bombs from both the front and rear of the aircraft.
The tail pistol is examined to make sure that the arming vane nut and striker move freely. The tail assemblies are now clipped onto the bombs. The tails are secured by 4 clips, and the armourer must see that these clips are properly engaged in their respective recesses.
Flying clothing and parachutes are retrieved from the lockers in the flying clothing room. This is also where the wireless operators join their crew members, as they're usually not required for the earlier briefing.
It is essential that the operation of clipping on the tail assemblies to the bomb should be correctly carried out. If this is not done, the tails will fall away from the bomb and the bomb's flight through the air become unstable. Another bomb train with a load of incendiary bombs arrives at the fusing point. These bombs are carried on the aircraft in small bomb containers. The transporter is then clipped onto the container and the container inverted by rolling the loading cradle, which is then removed. Loaded containers are placed on lorries or bomb trains for transport to the aircraft. When the NCO in charge is satisfied that all bombs have been properly fused and that safety devices are intact, the train moves off to the aircraft. The bomb train now arrives at the aircraft.
The air crews now gather near to whatever transport there is to take them out to the Blenheims. The ground crews wait for the final armourers to load the fused bombs onto the aircraft. If photographs are needed, it's the responsibility of the observer to collect the camera from the photographic section and install it in the Blenheim.
Except for one further important detail, the bombs are now ready for use. The armourer must remove the safety pins from the bombs and place them in the correct stowage position in the aircraft. This he should report both to the bomb aimer of the aircraft and to the armament NCO. You have done your part of the job now, and the flying crew will finish it. They will be risking their lives on a task which depends as much on your efficiency, care and skill as it will on theirs.
Typically, the Blenheim 4 can carry up to 1,000 pounds of bombs and has a range of approximately 1,460 miles. The aircraft is equipped with a single dorsal power-operated turret housing 2 .303 machine guns, as well as 1 or 2 fixed forward firing .303s. Its all-metal construction supports a maximum speed of 266 miles per hour and allows it to reach an altitude of 22,000 feet. With nerves on edge, the crews climb into their Blenheims, ready for the mission ahead. Each aircraft must be signed off by its pilot before the sortie. This ensures the RAF has a complete record of every plane in its fleet. The time comes to start the two Bristol Mercury radial engines. It was a Blenheim 4 that conducted the first reconnaissance flight over Germany on September 3, 1939. As the squadron prepares for takeoff, the pilots ensure the engines are running smoothly. The final checks are made, and the Blenheims are set for their mission. The ground crew now waits anxiously for the safe return of their aircraft. Pilots set the trim and rudder, advance the throttles, and lift off into the sky. Since the Blitz, Blenheim squadrons have been carrying out what are known as daylight circuses over the Channel, escorted by fighters. These daylight raids have become the backbone of Bomber Command's operations. Despite their crucial role, many brave crews have been lost on these perilous missions. Today, the mission is to strike targets on the north coast of France. Each crew member remains vigilant, knowing that German fighters are always poised to disrupt Blenheim formations. As the aircraft flies towards its target, a Luftwaffe base, the gunners are on high alert, prepared to fend off any enemy fighters. The bomb aimer focuses intently, guiding the aircraft onto its final approach despite the rising threat of flak. Steady her up for the final run, the pilot commands, maintaining composure amid the chaos. As the aircraft lines up for its target, the bombs are released with precision. One by one, the rest of the squadron follows suit, each aircraft delivering its payload in the ongoing effort to weaken the Luftwaffe's grip. Then it's time to head for home, as fast as those Mercuries can take you. England at last. As the Blenheims approach the airfield, the sight of familiar terrain and waiting ground crews brings a welcome sense of relief. This time, fortune favours them. All of the aircraft return home safely. The crews, having completed their dangerous mission, begin the process of debriefing and preparing for the next day's sorties. With another long day ahead, they take time to relax and catch a good night's sleep. In the meantime, the Royal Air Force's efforts extend beyond combat. The Air-Sea Rescue Units, equipped with fast and well-armed launchers, stand ready to assist. Recently, the Duke of Kent visited Mountbatten near Plymouth to observe the operations of Coastal Command and see firsthand the vital work being done to safeguard British waters. Just like the rest of the royal family, the Duke of Kent is committed to bolstering the morale of Britain's forces. While there, a Sunderland flying boat piloted by a member of the Royal Australian Air Force was dispatched on a critical mission. The target, an enemy U-boat spotted on the surface near the Eddystone Lighthouse. The Sunderland took off and, after verifying the U-boat's last known position, flew a precise and daring low-level attack. The mission was a success. The Sunderland's crew managed to sink the U-boat. Some of the enemy crew survived the encounter and were subsequently rescued by an RAF launch. They were brought back to Mountbatten for interrogation, providing valuable intelligence as a result of the successful operation. Meanwhile, the Sunderland and its crew alight, safely back at base. A suitable note is pinned to the ops board. A typical Sunderland crew is 11 men, whose long patrol always begins with a launch ride out to the flying boat at its mooring buoy. A new crew meticulously goes through their checklist, ensuring that all essential items are accounted for, including sunblinds, cooking ranges, kettles, teapots, stewpans, and cloth. These supplies are crucial for long patrols that can extend up to 20 hours. At the outbreak of war, Coastal Command was significantly underprepared, with only 19 squadrons available. 11 of those were Anson squadrons, 3 short Sunderlands, 2 and 1 London. Although the Anson was already considered outdated by the time, the first attack by Coastal Command on an enemy submarine was made by an Anson on September 5, 1939, though it achieved little success. Over the first 22 months of the war, Coastal Command expanded its home-based force to 34 squadrons. The Anson, with a takeoff speed of about 75 knots and a cruising speed of 120 to 125 knots, is typically flown at low altitudes, around 1,000 feet or even lower. In 1940, with German U-boats sinking vital Atlantic convoys, Coastal Command faced a significant challenge. The long-range Focke-Wulf FW-200, with a range of around 2,000 miles, posed a serious threat. At that time, Coastal Command had just 34 Sunderlands, the only aircraft with sufficient range to make a difference. The primary concern for Sunderland crews was being intercepted by German fighters. However, the Sunderland's size, combined with its front and rear gun turrets and additional gunners amidships, provided crucial defensive capabilities. Despite the dangers, the Sunderland's robust armament and size allowed it to endure and survive. New equipment, including air-dropped depth chargers and advanced air-to-surface vessel radar (ASV), further enhanced its effectiveness. The Sunderland is equipped with a well-appointed galley located in the lower hull, where one of the air gunners takes on the role of chief cook and bottle washer. For maintenance, minor repairs are handled on-site, but significant work, such as fixing bullet and cannon holes, is carried out ashore. The aircraft's Pegasus engines and Frazer-Nash gun turrets require regular upkeep to ensure optimal performance. Due to the corrosive effects of salt water, meticulous attention is given to the Sunderland's paintwork. Unlike amphibious aircraft, the Sunderland requires wheels to be attached to its fuselage for beaching during major maintenance operations. This setup allows for the necessary repairs and upkeep to be performed effectively. Day after day, the many crews from all over the Commonwealth bring their huge Sunderlands back safely to our maritime bases. Our thanks go out to these brave men of RAF's Coastal Command. Bomber Command has recently been bolstered by the arrival of several B-17 Flying Fortress bombers from our American allies. Initial feedback from RAF crews has been positive, though there are challenges. The B-17s, which operate at high altitudes, around 30,000 feet, to evade enemy flak, are currently flying without fighter escorts. They're dispatched in relatively small numbers, and crews have encountered issues such as guns freezing at these altitudes and inaccuracies with their bomb sights. In addition to the B-17s, other American aircraft now in the RAF's inventory include the Douglas Boston bomber and the Curtiss Tomahawk fighter. Prime Minister Winston Churchill visited Northolt Airfield, located west of London, on July 21, 1941. Sir Charles Portal, along with Prime Minister Winston Churchill and Sir Archibald Sinclair, the Air Secretary, began their inspection by examining the Curtiss Tomahawk fighter. They then proceeded to inspect the Stirling and Halifax Mark I bombers. Sir Charles took the opportunity to speak with some of the brave RAF crews, while Churchill and his entourage conducted a detailed examination of the B-17 Flying Fortress. Afterward, Sir Charles Portal himself had a chance to explore the B-17 more closely. American General Cheney guided the group to the Tomahawk for a final review. Before leaving Northolt to return to his duties at No. 10 Downing Street, Churchill was briefed on the plan for the B-17s. It's understood that for the time being, these American bombers are scheduled to be deployed to support operations in the Middle East. Finally, the Tomahawk and B-17 returned to their bases after an informative day at Northolt. The Tomahawks are now arriving in their packing cases from the Curtiss factories in the USA. Originally ordered by the French before the fall of France, these aircraft have been diverted to the RAF for use as fighter bombers. Unfortunately, the performance of the Tomahawk 1 in the low-level reconnaissance role has not met initial expectations, so it's likely that they'll be used as trainers in the RAF. Some are destined to be sent out to the Western Desert. Part of the problem with the Tomahawk appears to be the Allison engine, which, while reliable, doesn't seem to provide sufficient power for a modern fighter except at low levels. Curtiss has also produced the Hawk 75A, intended for the French Armée de l'Air. However, with the French defeat, the RAF has taken over these aircraft, now known as the Mohawk. Equipped with a Pratt & Whitney Twin Wasp radial engine, the Mohawk achieves a top speed of only 311 miles per hour. This makes it less competitive in the European theatre, leading to its deployment overseas. As of October 5, 1940, the total bomber force on paper stands at 532 aircraft. This total included 100 Wellingtons, which were versatile enough to perform various night strategic operations, until the new heavy 4-engine bombers became available. The Wellington's primary adversary is the flak encountered during their missions, and with minimal navigational aids and the cover of darkness, bomber crews face a grueling challenge both in locating and hitting their targets. Throughout 1940, German Luftwaffe night fighters claimed 42 aircraft downed. By the end of 1941, however, this figure had surged to an alarming 421 Wellingtons. The second of the RAF's 4-engine heavy bombers is the Handley Page Halifax. The prototype took to the skies about 5 months after the Stirling. Early models of the Halifax suffered from a significant design flaw in the tail section, which could lead to fatal spins if the rudders were locked over at full travel. Operational issues also plagued the Halifax.
Over the sea, from the mainland of Europe towards Britain, comes at dawn a British bomber, its night's work done, making for its base. Nearly home, nearly safe. They did their job, they got through the flak and the fighters. But you can't ever be sure that you got through quite unscathed.
Hello, Skipper. Engineer here. Number 5 starboard tank must be at home, because we haven't run on it, and the gauge is down to 60. Number 3 tank also, or its pipeline, because that's down to 20.
Sounds like trouble. We must run all engines off number 5 starboard. Turn on 5 and all balance cocks. Everything else off.
For instance, this particular stricken Halifax ran out of fuel and sadly crashed into the sea.
Get her leg on the up top. So come on, this Randy. All in. Hurry up. Engineer here. Yes. Yeah, got on here. Yes. Second pilot here. Yes. Wireless operator. Yes. Front gunner. Yes. Navigator. Yes. Off engineer.
A Handley Page Hampden search plane is dispatched to the area mentioned in the radio message to scan the sea for any signs of the stricken Halifax crew. In response to the distress, an RAF rescue launch is mobilised to locate and assist the crew. Boat 147, a Fairmile Type D motor launch introduced in 1940, is tasked with the search and rescue mission. It's prefabricated and built for patrol and escort duties, which the RAF use in their air-sea rescue role.
But if the Navy is nearer, the Air Force calls on the Navy. Lives depend on these rescuers and on the dinghy.
The Fairmile Type B rescue launch, though commonly seen, is well equipped for such tasks. It's armed and powered by 2 Hall-Scott petrol engines, delivering 1,220 brake horsepower, allowing it to cruise at an impressive 18 to 20 knots.
It's a small thing to look for, a dinghy, but the launch will be guided by the search planes. By air and sea, the eyes of Britain seek the men who've done their job for Britain and haven't got back. In the incessant raids of Bomber Command, some air crews must ditch, and they may drift hours or days, and their lives depend upon the speed and skill of the searchers. Sighted! And the plane drops a smoke float to guide the launch to the spot. This crew is lucky. Their rescue came soon.
Meanwhile, a significant development in British heavy bombers is on the horizon. The new bomber, designated the Lancaster, is set to become operational by Christmas 1941. This new addition will eventually replace the Handley Page Hampdens, currently used by No. 1 and No. 5 Group squadrons based in Lincolnshire. The Avro Lancaster is a direct successor to the ill-fated twin-engined Manchester, which suffered from significant reliability issues, particularly with its Rolls-Royce Vulture engines. These problems rendered the Manchester unsuitable as a medium bomber. In contrast, the Lancaster benefits from 4 reliable Merlin engines, each contributing to its impressive speed of approximately 275 miles per hour. The Lancaster addresses some of the Manchester's critical flaws, including its troublesome tail unit. To improve handling, some Manchester models were fitted with a triple fin arrangement, a feature not needed in the Lancaster due to its more advanced design. The Lancaster boasts a wingspan of just over 100 feet and is equipped with 3 hydraulically powered turrets. Its impressive payload capacity allows it to carry up to 14,000 pounds of bombs over a range of about 1,600 miles, making it a formidable addition to the RAF's bomber fleet. The Avro Lancaster, with its 7-man crew, includes a pilot, flight engineer, navigator, bomb aimer, wireless operator, and mid, upper and rear air gunners. Each member of the crew is a specialist, trained to operate seamlessly as a team. While the Lancaster may struggle against determined daylight fighter attacks, it's well equipped to defend itself during night operations. Its maximum operational ceiling is 22,000 feet. It can continue flying on 3 engines, and experienced pilots report that it can even limp along on just 2 engines if needed. This robust design ensures that the Lancaster remains a reliable and formidable heavy bomber in the RAF's fleet. The Lancaster might well be the aircraft Bomber Command has been seeking to deliver a decisive blow to the Third Reich.
When in 1938 war clouds were gathering over the continent of Europe, the Rolls-Royce factory in Derby assumed a new importance. Home of the company since its inception in 1906, it was from here that one of the United Nations' greatest contributions to victory was brought to fruition, by a picked group of designers, engineers and executives under the able leadership of Sir Arthur Sitgreaves and Mr. E.W. Hives. Inspired by the tradition handed down by the late Sir Henry Royce that only perfection was good enough, management and workers set about the task of further developing an aero engine which would enable the air forces of democracy to sweep the enemy from the skies and bomb his industries into submission. This engine was the Merlin. Away from imminent danger of air attack, an unobtrusive country house set deep in the Derbyshire countryside sheltered the Rolls-Royce Aero Planning Department. Here, engine designers worked under conditions of highest secrecy on the development of the Merlin engine, armed with data and experience gained from previous engines. The main characteristics of the new engine had already been decided in theory by the Engine Development Committee at Derby, and now began the task of calculating main dimensions and producing the plans for quantity production. At the same time, scale models of complete engines and power plants were made of wood in order to visualize and check the exterior dimensions, while much time could be saved in checking the dimensional suitability of modifications. Matters like frontal area, engine weight, working of retractable undercarriage, position of center of gravity could all be deduced from measurements and behaviors of these models. Next step was the making by skilled engineer draftsmen of many thousands of detailed working drawings, which would constitute the basis for building the prototype. As these drawings had in turn to be duplicated for use in the workshops, a blueprint department with an average output of 6,000 drawings a day was brought into being. At the experimental shop in Derby, emphasis is on the man rather than on the tool. Versatility is the keynote. Every job is different, and the men in this shop are among the most skilled workers in the Rolls-Royce organization. Soon the first components begin to take shape. In the experimental shop, the tool equipment is less specialized than that of the factories on production work, as it is concerned mainly with one-off jobs. Where duplication is necessary for parts like connecting rods, a Keller machine is used. The cutters are made to follow a master template, producing several identical pieces at a time. Few jigs and fixtures are available in the experimental stage, so the alignment of a machined surface is checked on the marking-off table. A new engine is seldom built complete at first, so that although the production engine may have 12 or 24 cylinders, the first experimental job may only consist of one section of the crankshaft. And from this single-cylinder engine comes the first positive information. From these results, a forecast of the behavior of the full-size prototype can be made. When the prototype is assembled, it goes to the test house. The engine is coupled to a dynamometer, which is a form of water brake, which absorbs the entire power output of the engine, and is capable of adjustment so that the characteristics of the engine at different loads and speeds can be measured. The control panel also has instrument consumption, boost pressure, oil pressure, coolant temperature, engine revs, power output, and many other quantities. Ever since it was first developed, the rated horsepower of the Merlin has steadily increased. The later types have a power output 2 or 3 times as great as that of the original prototype, without any great change in leading dimensions. After test, the prototype is stripped down, and its parts are subjected to minute inspection. Parts which show signs of undue stress or wear are examined by the chief engineer and designers, who decide what alterations in design, manufacturing methods or materials are necessary. Once the prototype has passed its first test bed trials, it undergoes further tests with the air screw fitted. Finally, it is ready for its flight test. Installed in an aircraft fuselage, the Rolls-Royce test pilot takes off to confirm that the Merlin engine will in practice do as much and even more than the designers had planned. Realizing that quantity, as well as quality, would be the need of the day, the Air Ministry asked Rolls-Royce to build a large factory away from Derby for the quantity production of Merlin engines. In 1938, work began on the erection of a large ultra-modern plant at Crewe, while in 1939, as war became a certainty, the company were asked to build yet another factory about twice the size of Crewe. Glasgow was selected, and work commenced on the Glasgow plant in July 1939. By early December, the first machine tools were already in production on the Merlin. In laying out the various factories for quantity production, the problem of the most efficient placing of machines and processes was solved by making planned silhouettes to scale of each machine and item of workshop furniture. These silhouettes were then manoeuvred on a scaled floor plan until the ideal disposition was found. The layout was then photographed, and copies were sent to the plant engineers. As soon as all the machines were installed, full-scale production on Merlin engines commenced. Producing the Merlin engine in vast quantities without losing anything of the world-renowned Rolls-Royce qualities of precision workmanship presented untold obstacles. Apart from the difficulties of operating under wartime blackout conditions and the demands of the fighting services on road and rail transport, making difficult the movement of raw materials, there was the problem of labour. To overcome the manpower difficulty, training establishments were set up in various parts of the country. Under the tutelage of skilled Rolls-Royce craftsmen, both men and women were given intensive training in the operation of highly specialized machine tools in a section of the factory specially equipped for this purpose. In order to increase the supply of engineering draftsmen, experiments were made in training women of suitable educational qualifications. Inspired by the firm's tradition, these women eagerly proved their aptitude for this exacting work, and large numbers graduated to works drawing offices at the various plants. Apart from training men and women for aero-engine production, the company was faced with the problem of housing and transporting them to and from work. At both Crewe and Glasgow, housing estates and hostels were built within sight of the plant to shelter the workers who had come from all over the United Kingdom. In view of the fact that in Glasgow alone over 1,500 houses had been built, the local transport companies were called upon to cooperate in organising 126 special bus services to and from a depot inside the works itself, enabling the workers to get immediate transport to outlying districts. To protect the factories against air and ground attack, strong Home Guard and civil defence detachments were formed, made up of volunteer workers from the various plants. Fire brigades, also manned by workers, soon reached a high degree of proficiency and were equipped with motor pumps and all the latest firefighting appliances. The Rolls-Royce organisation was possibly unique in having its own bomb disposal unit, equally prepared to play a vital and dangerous part in an emergency. In order to safeguard the workers' health, an efficient medical organisation was brought into being. All new workers were given a medical examination and eyesight test, while surgeries and restrooms, staffed by resident doctors and nurses, were a feature of each plant. In order to ensure maximum cooperation between workers and management, joint production committees were formed at each factory, consisting of representatives of the management and representatives and shop stewards of the workers. Vast stocks of raw materials were built up, and a sample of every piece of incoming bar, tube, rod, or forging was sent to the laboratories for analysis. Each batch of material was given a number which stayed with it through every process, and a sample was taken so that a fault developing at any time during the component's history could be traced back to the raw material stage. Some of the most valuable raw materials were the light metal and other alloys discovered and developed in the company's research laboratories at Derby. Apart from the famous RR-50, used in the manufacture of castings, many other equally important contributions to the Allied war effort were made by the pick of scientists and technologists working in these laboratories. In the Rolls-Royce drop forge shop, alloy steel forgings were pounded out night and day. The most highly stressed components of the Merlin engine are made from these forgings, which allow a very high output of accurately formed parts, while the metal itself, due to its molecular flow under the blows of the forge, becomes more homogeneous and capable of withstanding higher strains. In the manufacture of the Merlin engine, the light alloy foundry at Glasgow is unique in the Rolls-Royce organization and probably in the world. The foundry, with its core, moulding and fettling shops, occupies 2 entire blocks of the factory and is organized, like the rest of the plant, on a flow production basis. The layout of the foundry and its organization for production constitute a great feat of technical planning. Every kind of casting used in making Merlin engines is produced here. Very many difficulties had to be overcome on the material side of the process, and the achievement is made more remarkable by the fact that many of the workers are trainees, a large proportion of them women. Core making is a process which illustrates the way in which complex operations normally requiring much time and a high order of skill have been rendered rapid and certain in the hands of trainees of both sexes. The lighter cores are made by hand and mainly by women, on core tables to which ready-mixed sand is delivered by an overhead conveyor system. All the 300-odd intricate cores which go to each engine are made in the same manner. Organization has made each individual job simple. Men make the heavier cores by machine. A number of heavy cores are used in the upper half of the crankcase mould to form the bearing webs. This is one of the 2 main moulding bays, which are arranged on either side of the line of furnaces. The moulding machines are mostly of the rollover jolt type, both hydraulically and pneumatically operated and very simple to control. This mould, for the upper half of the crankcase, is the largest on the engine. Complete with cores and moulding box, it weighs a ton. The number of cores in the mould are an indication of the intricacy of the casting. This mould of the upper half crankcase, although the largest, is by no means the most intricate in the engine. The aluminium alloy, principally the famous RR-50, is melted in gas-heated tilting furnaces adjacent to the mould conveyors. The larger moulds are poured from 2 sides simultaneously. This allows the use of ladles of manageable size and also tends towards an even temperature of metal throughout the mould. Very many and very large risers are employed to ensure sound metal in the casting. Castings are fettled in this bay with power saws and pneumatic hand tools. The first job is cutting off the runners and risers. On large castings, these are very massive, and a special type of twin-hand circular saw has been developed to do the job. The saws cut into the surplus metal from both sides so that it can be easily broken away at the end of the cut. Final fettling of the castings is done with pneumatic chisels. These cut away all the flash and webs which are not needed in the finished casting. Every casting is inspected before it goes for heat treatment. Before the castings are machined, they undergo heat treatment in this 88-feet-long priest furnace. The castings are loaded onto bogies, which are pushed into the front end of the furnace. This automatically pushes out a completely heat-treated load at the other end. It has 3 heat zones, and the temperatures are automatically regulated within plus or minus 2 degrees centigrade. Very many Merlin castings are produced by die casting. Metal moulds, or dies, are used in this process, which thus effects a considerable saving of time, since the same mould can be used over and over again. The die castings are taken away on the conveyor for heat treatment in the same way as sand mould castings. These die castings can be made to much finer limits than can ordinary sand castings. The surface is smoother, and because no gases are evolved in the mould, the metal is usually more homogeneous. The castings go to the machine shops for finishing. During the last few decades, amazing progress has taken place in the development of very elaborate and complex machine tools, both automatic and semi-automatic. Even in the hands of trainees or unskilled operators, these machines can and do perform the apparent miracle of producing in vast quantities the most intricate parts with the highest degree of precision. Actually, many men and women classed as unskilled or semi-skilled have become highly skilled and proficient in working a particular machine or operation, but the term is still used to distinguish them from the fully skilled Rolls-Royce operator. Operators, such as those at the Derby Works, have served a long term of apprenticeship, and schooled in the Rolls-Royce tradition have become qualified by this skill and experience to set up any machine and make the many adjustments necessary to keep it producing accurate work in the hands of trainee operators. Many of these machines have actually been developed by Rolls-Royce engineers, and such is the final simplicity of operation that although a skilled man would need vast quantities of complex drawings to make the parts by hand, these company-developed machines can be handled by comparatively inexperienced trainees, while still retaining the rigid Rolls-Royce standards of precision. The crankshaft is probably the most highly stressed component of an aero engine. Over 140 separate machining operations are needed to produce the Merlin crankshaft. For these processes, a large number of special-purpose machines were developed by Rolls-Royce, including vertical and horizontal automatic lathes, deep drilling and grinding machines, and these crankshaft lapping machines. The rough crankshaft forging weighs 250 pounds. In its finished condition, the shaft weighs 108 pounds. The connecting rod is another highly stressed component of the engine, and over 160 operations are necessary to produce a completely articulated pair. After every machine operation on a Rolls-Royce component, the part is subjected to careful inspection before passing on to the next operation. Women proved themselves to be particularly adept at this exacting work. There are over 11,000 parts in a Merlin engine, and a high proportion of the smaller items are made from bar material on automatic and capstan lathes. Except for tool setting, this work is repetitive, though quite an amount of skill is needed to be a good operator. Nevertheless, the consistently high output figures on close limit work to Rolls-Royce standards, achieved by trainee men and women who previously had no experience in the engineering industry, is indeed a remarkable achievement. Some 90 different types and sizes of gear wheels go into the Merlin, and all must be produced to exceptionally high standards of accuracy. Accurate tooth form and perfect structure of the metal itself is vital to the smooth running of gearing. A special gear analyzer is used for measuring the tooth forms of helical gears. This apparatus traces an enlarged graph, showing any departure from the theoretically perfect form. Great care and thought were devoted to the development of valves and valve springs. Machined from forgings, the first valve forming operations are done on turret lathes and automatics. The heads and seating faces are covered with a special heat-resisting nickel-chrome alloy, applied in the flame of an oxyacetylene glow lamp. Exhaust valves are made with hollow stems and are half filled with sodium, which melts at a low temperature. When the engine is running, heat is transferred from the head of the valve to the stem by the sodium splashing up and down. Valve springs are made from coils of high-tensile steel wire, in a specially designed machine which coils valve springs continuously and automatically cuts them to length. After grinding and finishing, the springs are tempered in a special furnace. The journal and big ends of the Merlin run in bearings of a lead-bronze alloy. The bearing shells are made of steel, into which are inserted casting tubes, secured by spinning their lower edges over in a lathe. After the shells have been preheated, the lead-bronze alloy is cast from a parametrically controlled electric induction furnace, The poured liners are then placed in a special cooling device consisting of a cylinder with jets of water spraying inwards. The rotor of the supercharger is outstanding among the light alloy components of the engine. This component may be called upon to run at between 20,000 and 30,000 revolutions per minute, corresponding to a peripheral speed exceeding the velocity of sound. It is, therefore, in the highest degree important that this rotor should be perfectly balanced. This is achieved by machining it all over. There are countless machining and finishing operations involved in the manufacture of thousands of other Merlin engine components. To each of these, unstinting thought and care were given in devising machines and machine tools capable of producing the required rate of quantity output without losing anything of the traditional Rolls-Royce quality. In order to ensure that the standards of manufacture were being maintained, Rolls-Royce engineers developed many high-precision measuring gauges and other complicated items of inspection apparatus to augment and improve the standards of normal engineering precision gauges. Inspection of each of the 11,000 Merlin components, not once but many times, was continuous throughout every stage of manufacture, including a thorough final inspection when the parts were completed. Every factory has at least one air-conditioned, temperature-controlled standards room, in which the gauges and inspection devices used in the manufacture of Rolls-Royce engines are continually checked against standard gauges and precision comparators, whose accuracy is of the order of 10/millionths of an inch. When the finished components reach the sub-assembly stage, the engine begins to take shape. The assembly process is arranged as a sequence of operations in the same way as the machining. The sub-assembly benches are arranged in lines between the finished part stores and the engine erection lines. The component travels along the assembly line through the hands of dozens of different workers who each add their part or do their particular operation so that the component is finished at the end of the line. Components like the supercharger are built up separately so that they go into the engine as complete units. At the end of the sub-assembly lines is the engine assembly shop, where the sub-assemblies are delivered at convenient points and are put together to make complete engines. Engine assembly starts with the crankcase, which has had all its studs and cylinder holding down bolts fitted on the sub-assembly benches. The engine assembly line has a bench-height rail track down the center, which enables the work to be pushed easily from station to station along the line. A turntable in the track at each siding enables the engine to be run off the main line while fitting is in progress, leaving the main line free for the flow of work. At each station, a sub-assembly or component is added to the engine. As the engine passes down the line, it gradually takes form. The policy of specialization is applied here in the same way as in the other departments of manufacture. Each job is done by a crew who are specialists in fitting their particular component. This policy enables the workers to become expert in a short time. At the end of the line, the completed engine is vetted by an inspector who notes the numbers of individual components and assigns a new number to the whole engine. From now on, it has an identity. It is given a logbook in which all its subsequent history will be recorded, but meanwhile it is to be taken away for its first run on the test bed. Every Merlin is run on the test bed before it is passed into service. The Ministry of Aircraft Production prescribe very stringent tests for engines to be used in the RAF or the Fleet Air Arm, so several hours' run at the rated horsepower of the engine are followed by bursts at maximum power, while test engineers make careful notes of the engine's behavior. A certain proportion of engines which have satisfactorily passed their tests are nevertheless brought back and immediately stripped down. The running test demonstrates that every component is capable of doing its job. This strip down is to make sure that there has been no overheating or overloading, and to ensure, in short, that the engine will go on doing its job and maintain the standard of manufacture. Once more reassembled, the engines are ready for active service, but the job is not yet finished. Just before the war, it became apparent that in order to ensure the satisfactory installation of the engine and the consequent safety of the aeroplane's crew, it was necessary for Rolls-Royce to devote their engineering skill to designing the completely cowled power plant installation, ready for attachment to the aeroplane fuselage. This enterprise in tackling the complete power plant and developing it into a quickly detachable and interchangeable unit was acclaimed as one of the outstanding achievements of British aviation during the war. No survey of Rolls-Royce wartime service would be complete without reference to some of their many other contributions to the success of the Allied nations. Early in the war, it became obvious that the facilities which had been envisaged for the repair of damaged engines were going to prove entirely inadequate, and measures to remedy the position became of the utmost urgency. Rolls-Royce set about tackling this problem and had the satisfaction of seeing the figure of overhauled engines, which stood at a few hundred in 1939, rise to over 18,000 during 1944. The Rolls-Royce School of Instruction at Derby had trained nearly 17,000 people in the use and maintenance of Rolls-Royce engines and other products. Those trained included pilots, flight engineers and ground personnel of not only the Royal Air Force and the Fleet Air Arm, but of representatives of the air forces of most of our allies. Another interesting example of Rolls-Royce versatility was the development of a small-caliber 40mm quick-firing gun for use in MTBs and similar craft. The Merlin engine was also adapted for powering these high-speed motorboats. Then again, there was developed a modified and unsupercharged version of the Merlin known as the Meteor, which was used to power the first prototype of a new tank. The effect of the extra power of the engine on the prototype tank was such that Rolls-Royce engineers were asked to collaborate in developing the tank itself. The fruits of this collaboration resulted in the famous Cromwell tank, which covered itself in glory on the dash from the Normandy beachheads to the Rhine.
The Rolls-Royce organization may well be proud of its contribution to victory. Workers, designers, engineers, management all fulfilled a vital role in Britain's days of need. Now they can once more turn their hands and their brains to the fulfillment of the needs of a world at peace. And this, indeed, they have done. For in October 1945, 2 months after the end of hostilities, it was a Rolls-Royce jet turbine that streaked across Britain's luring skies to claim the world's speed record of 606 miles an hour. What promises to civil aviation did this imply? What even newer principles of engine design and propulsion are now occupying the minds of the Rolls-Royce organization? For the world of science has much in store, and in the forefront of mankind's march onward will be Rolls-Royce applying to practice the newest and latest principles of scientific achievement.